The courtroom was quiet, but the tension was thick enough to choke on. A single beam of sunlight filtered through the high windows, casting long shadows on the polished wooden floor. The sharp click of heels echoed as the bailiff strode to the bench and rapped his gavel with authority. "Order in the court," he commanded. The murmur stopped instantly. At the center of this storm sat Malik Johnson, a 17-year-old teenager whose world was crumbling around him. His thin fingers twisted nervously in his lap. His eyes, wide and anxious, flicked from the stern judge to the rows of faces, some cold, some curious, some filled with quiet judgment. The hum of whispered conversations outside the courtroom seemed miles away. Inside, Malik's breathing felt shallow, as if the very air was closing in. He was surrounded by strangers, lawyers in dark suits, the serious faces of police officers, reporters scribbling notes. But none of them knew Malik's truth. Malik was no stranger to hardship. Raised by his mother Tanya in a working-class neighborhood where the streets whispered stories of struggle, he had learned early that life didn't often play fair. School was his refuge. Basketball was his dream. He wanted nothing more than to break free from the cycle that gripped so many boys like him, caught between suspicion and survival. His best friend Jamal often reminded him, "Keep your head down, stay out of trouble." But Malik wasn't one to cause trouble. He had stayed late the night before at Jamal's house, studying for his upcoming exams, talking about college scholarships. But none of that mattered now. Because yesterday the police showed up at his door, accusing him of something he didn't do. The charge? Armed robbery. The local convenience store had been hit the night before. According to police reports, the suspect was a young black man, armed and dangerous, caught on surveillance video demanding money. Malik's face was plastered on wanted posters and social media. But Malik knew the truth. He wasn't there. He was at Jamal's house with witnesses ready to back him up, if anyone would listen. Inside the courtroom, the prosecutor's words were sharp and cold. "Your Honor, this defendant is no stranger to our community's problems. We have video evidence placing him at the scene holding a weapon, threatening the clerk." Malik's defense attorney rose, voice steady but strained. "Your Honor, my client has an alibi. Multiple witnesses can confirm he was not near the store that night." But the room seemed unmoved. Prejudice hung heavy. A whispered assumption seemed to echo in every corner. Guilty until proven innocent. Malik's mother sat beside him, her hands clenched tight into fists. Her eyes were red from crying and sleepless nights, but her spirit was unbroken. "Hold on, Malik," she whispered. "I believe you." But even her words couldn't erase the fear gnawing at her heart. How do you fight a system that often sees you as the problem? The judge adjusted his glasses, eyes scanning the documents before him. Outside, the distant wail of sirens reminded everyone how close danger always lurked. Malik's mind raced. He thought of his dreams, the basketball courts, college applications, a future beyond this courtroom. Could all of that slip away because of one night he wasn't even part of? His stomach twisted. The prosecutor called for the first piece of evidence, the surveillance footage. The courtroom screen flickered to life. The grainy black and white images showed a figure in a dark hoodie, face obscured, brandishing what looked like a gun inside the store. The clerk's terrified face filled the screen. Murmurs rippled through the room. Malik's heart hammered. This wasn't him, but the shadows seemed to paint his guilt. The defense attorney objected. "Your Honor, this footage is unclear. The image is grainy, the person's face cannot be positively identified." But the prosecutor pressed on, voice dripping with certainty. "This is the moment justice is demanded, for the safety of our community." Malik swallowed hard. He glanced at his mother, then at the jury. Would they see the boy who sat here trembling, or only the shadow of a neighborhood stereotype? The judge nodded slowly. "We will continue with witness testimonies." Just then the courtroom door creaked open. A figure stepped in. Silence fell. All eyes turned. And with that, the balance of this fight began to shift. The courtroom fell into a heavy silence as the courtroom doors creaked open again. All eyes turned toward the figure who stepped forward, Jamal Harris, Malik's best friend. He walked with purpose, his face steady but his eyes reflecting the weight of what was at stake. The judge nodded to him, inviting his testimony. "Your Honor," Jamal began, voice calm but firm, "I was with Malik the entire night the robbery happened." He paused, scanning the jury in the courtroom. "We were at my house, studying late for our upcoming exams. Malik never left." The prosecutor's eyes narrowed, his lips pressing into a tight line. "You expect this court to accept the word of a single friend as an alibi?" But the judge held up a hand. "Please continue." Jamal took a breath and pressed on. "We aren't alone in this." He gestured to the defense attorney. "There are neighbors who can confirm. They saw us at Jamal's that night, heard us talking, saw the lights on." The defense called those neighbors forward one by one. Mrs. Carter, a retired schoolteacher with a reputation for honesty, spoke first. "I was awake late that night," she said, her voice steady despite her age. "I looked out my window and saw two boys inside Jamal's house studying. I recognized Malik and Jamal." Another neighbor, Mr. Lewis, a local shop owner, added, "I drove past Jamal's house around 9 p.m. I saw the porch light on. Later I gave Malik a ride to school. He was with Jamal." The courtroom buzzed quietly with this new testimony. The defense attorney turned to the jury. Multiple witnesses placed Malik miles away from the crime scene during the robbery. The prosecution, however, was not willing to concede. They argued that eyewitness identifications are often more reliable than phone calls or neighbor statements. "Memory is sometimes clearer when a crime happens," the prosecutor said. Malik's stomach knotted as the store clerk took the stand. Her voice shook as she recounted the night of the robbery. "I was terrified. The man wore a mask, but I know Malik from around the neighborhood. His voice, his build, it was him." She swallowed hard, tears threatening to fall. This testimony carried heavy weight. It was no longer just about facts. It was about fear and the deep-rooted biases in the community. Malik felt the walls closing in. Then the defense attorney requested to present new evidence. "Your Honor, we submit Malik's phone records and GPS data as proof." The judge allowed it. The courtroom held its breath as the records were displayed. The data showed Malik's phone pinging near Jamal's neighborhood during the exact time the robbery occurred. The prosecution looked unsettled but objected, arguing that phones can be borrowed or faked. But the evidence was concrete, supported by several witnesses and records. The judge leaned forward, addressing both sides. "This evidence warrants further consideration." A murmur of hope rippled through the courtroom. Malik exhaled slowly for the first time in days. But the prosecutor was not finished. Rising again, he said, "Your Honor, there are still inconsistencies. We ask for additional investigation before any ruling." Malik looked to his mother, whose grip on his hand tightened. Would this fight ever end? Would justice finally prevail? Or was this just another delay in a system weighed down by prejudice? The gavel hit the bench again, echoing through the tense room. "Court is adjourned until further notice." Malik's journey for truth was far from over. The courtroom emptied slowly, but Malik remained seated, his heart pounding in his chest. His mother, Tanya, leaned over and whispered softly, "We will get through this, son. We have to." But Malik's mind was a storm of fear and uncertainty. How long would this nightmare last? Would anyone ever hear his side of the story? Would the truth ever surface in a system so quick to judge? The days blurred into weeks. Malik's life stalled. School assignments piled up. Basketball practices were missed. Friends stopped calling. His world felt smaller by the hour, confined to endless interviews, court dates, and waiting rooms. Every question from detectives and lawyers felt like a test, one he wasn't sure he could pass. Meanwhile, Tanya refused to give up. She worked around the clock, gathering every scrap of evidence that could help prove Malik's innocence. She collected text messages, screenshots of Malik's whereabouts, and spoke to neighbors who could testify. She reached out to lawyers, community leaders, anyone who might listen. Her determination was fierce, born from a mother's love and desperation. One afternoon, a call came that shifted everything. A local community organizer, Ms. Robinson, known for fighting against injustice, contacted Tanya. "I've seen this story before," Ms. Robinson said quietly. "But we're not going to let Malik become another statistic." She offered to help dig deeper, to question the evidence beyond the surface. Together, Tanya, Ms. Robinson, and Malik's defense attorney requested the original surveillance footage from the convenience store. What arrived was not what they expected. The video was grainy, far worse than the version shown in court. The figure on the footage was bulky, wearing a large hoodie and loose clothing, nothing like Malik's slim build. The timestamp too seemed off. Some frames appeared missing, and the sequence didn't match the police's timeline. Suspecting manipulation, Ms. Robinson contacted a digital forensic expert. The expert's analysis revealed troubling signs. Frames had been removed, audio was edited, and certain angles had been cropped to obscure details. Evidence, it seemed, had been altered. This discovery sent shockwaves through Malik's defense team and supporters. If the key piece of evidence was tampered with, what else in the case could be false? Was Malik's innocence buried beneath lies and shortcuts? Armed with this explosive information, the defense filed a motion to dismiss the charges, demanding a full review of the evidence. The courtroom reconvened, tension rising as the case took an unexpected turn. Malik walked into the courtroom, his steps hesitant but determined. The air buzzed with whispers about the tampered footage. The prosecutor's face tightened, clearly unsettled but ready to fight back. The defense attorney stood, presenting the findings with firm clarity. Your Honor, this footage, which was the cornerstone of the prosecution's case, is unreliable. It shows clear signs of tampering and cannot be used as evidence. The judge leaned forward, fingers steepled, listening intently. After a long pause he said, "This court takes allegations of evidence tampering very seriously." He ordered an independent investigation to review all the evidence thoroughly. A ripple of hope swept through the courtroom. Malik looked over at his mother. Her eyes, swollen from sleepless nights, sparkled with cautious optimism. After weeks of despair, a small light had pierced the darkness. But the fight was far from over. Behind the scenes, resistance was building. Not everyone wanted the truth to come out. As the independent review began, new obstacles appeared: delays, missing files, reluctant witnesses. The system that had almost crushed Malik now seemed bent on protecting itself. Malik and his family braced for the battles ahead, knowing this journey toward justice would test their strength in ways they never imagined. The independent investigation was officially underway. But from the start, Malik's defense team encountered roadblocks. Files that should have been easily accessible vanished without explanation. Requests for witness interviews were met with silence or refusal. It became clear, the system wasn't making this easy. Tanya sat in the dim light of their small living room, phone pressed to her ear, voice tight with exhaustion. "Please, we need those records. It's my son's life on the line." But every call ended with vague promises and delays. She felt the crushing weight of bureaucracy, and a suspicion that someone was protecting the truth from coming out. Malik tried to keep his routine. He woke early for school, practiced his free throws, and studied late into the night. He refused to let the court case steal his future. Yet the fear never fully left him. The uncertainty gnawed at his peace. Would justice ever find him? Then a breakthrough came, not from the courtroom but from an unexpected source. Detective Marcus Green, a veteran officer with a reputation for honesty, quietly contacted Malik's lawyer. "I've reviewed the case," he said plainly. "There's more here than meets the eye." Detective Green shared details that had been overlooked in the initial investigation. A second set of security cameras installed near the convenience store's back alley had recorded crucial footage. The grainy video revealed a man, not Malik, entering and leaving the store during the time of the robbery. The suspect matched the description of a known local criminal with a history of armed robbery. The prosecution tried to dismiss this new evidence as irrelevant. But Detective Green was persistent, demanding that the footage be included in the case review. The defense team quickly filed a motion to dismiss the charges based on the new evidence. As the courtroom reconvened, tension filled the air. Malik sat with his mother, gripping her hand tightly. Months of pain and fear had brought them here, to the moment where the truth might finally be heard. The judge called the court to order. He reviewed the new evidence, his expression serious. After a long pause he spoke. "Given the emergence of this new footage, coupled with the doubts raised regarding the original evidence, this court finds the charges against Malik Johnson unsupported." A hush fell over the room. Then the judge's voice grew firmer. "The charges against Malik Johnson are hereby dismissed." Tears welled up in Tanya's eyes as she hugged Malik. Freedom was no longer a distant hope, it was real. Outside the courthouse, a crowd of family, friends, and supporters erupted in cheers. Signs waved in the air, messages of hope, justice, and change. Malik stepped forward to speak, his voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions. "I want to thank everyone who stood by me, who believed that truth matters. This isn't just my victory. It's a victory for everyone fighting against injustice in our communities." His words carried far beyond the courthouse steps. They sparked conversations, inspired activism, and reminded everyone that the fight for justice is ongoing. But Malik also knew the journey wasn't over. For every victory like his, countless others remained trapped by prejudice and broken systems. He vowed to use his story to shine light on those injustices, to be a voice for the voiceless, and to remind the world that sometimes, the truth needs a fight. The moment the judge dismissed the charges, Malik and his family felt a rush of relief wash over them. But that relief was fragile, like a glass barely held together. The real battle, the one for their reputation, their peace, and their future, was only beginning. Back at school, Malik walked the halls with a cautious step. Though the court had cleared his name, the whispers didn't stop. Students who once nodded hello now looked away. Some questioned quietly in groups, unsure whether to believe the headlines or the rumors. Teachers treated him with polite distance. The label of accused lingered, despite his innocence. His mother, Tanya, felt the weight too, judgment from neighbors and community members. Questions followed her like shadows. How did Malik get involved with something like that? Even friends she had known for years pulled away, afraid of the stigma. One afternoon, Tanya sat on their small front porch, wiping tears from her eyes. "I fought so hard to prove Malik's innocence," she said quietly, "but it feels like the world still sees the charges, not the truth." Malik joined her, placing a steady hand on her shoulder. "We can't control what they think," he said. "But we can show them who we really are." Slowly Malik began to reclaim his life. He returned to schoolwork with fierce determination, pushing to catch up on lost time. He practiced basketball harder than ever, channeling frustration into focus. But most importantly, he found his voice. Local community centers invited him to share his story. At neighborhood meetings, youth groups, even church gatherings, Malik spoke openly about what he had endured. His message was clear: the danger of jumping to conclusions, the damage bias causes, and the importance of fighting for justice. During one meeting, Malik looked out at a room full of young faces. He said, "Being falsely accused changed everything for me. It showed me the power of standing up, not just for myself but for anyone who might not have a voice." The room erupted in applause. For many, Malik was more than a teenager cleared of charges. He was a symbol of resilience and hope. News of Malik's courage spread beyond his neighborhood. Local leaders and activists began to pay attention. Policies around police evidence handling came under review. Training programs about implicit bias and fair policing were introduced in precincts. Malik's case became a catalyst for community dialogue. Neighbors who once whispered doubts began to ask hard questions. How can we prevent this from happening again? What do we do to rebuild trust? Yet Malik knew change was slow and complicated. One victory in court didn't erase decades of systemic bias. But every conversation, every new program was a step forward. One evening, Tanya sat with Malik at their kitchen table, the soft glow of a single lamp illuminating their tired faces. "We can't let your story be the last," she said. "We have to keep pushing, for fairness, for truth, for every family caught in this." Malik nodded, feeling the deep responsibility settle in his chest. He understood now. Justice wasn't just about winning a case. It was about respect. It was about changing hearts and minds. It was about fighting so no other young person would have to face what he did. Malik's fight had become bigger than himself. It was a movement, one born from pain, shaped by courage and fueled by hope. Though the road ahead remained long and uncertain, Malik faced it with new strength. He was no longer just a teenager falsely accused. He was a voice for justice, a beacon for change, and a reminder that truth matters, even when the odds are stacked against you. Months had passed since the judge's ruling cleared Malik's name. But the freedom he gained that day didn't erase the heavy toll the ordeal had taken. Malik often found himself alone with his thoughts, reliving the fear, the isolation, and the uncertainty that gripped him for so long. Yet those memories also strengthened his resolve. He understood that his story was not just personal, it was part of a much bigger issue. A system that too often assumes guilt before innocence, especially for young black men like him. Determined to turn his experience into something meaningful, Malik connected with local advocacy groups focused on criminal justice reform. He began speaking at schools, community centers, and public events. With raw honesty and quiet strength, Malik shared the truth about what it feels like to be falsely accused and the urgent need for change. At a packed town hall meeting, Malik took the microphone with steady hands. "Being falsely accused almost cost me everything. My future, my dreams, my dignity," he said, his voice resonating across the room. "But I'm here to tell you justice isn't just a word. It's a fight we all need to join." He looked around at the faces in the crowd, young and old, parents and teachers, officials and neighbors. "We need to demand fairness in our legal system. We need transparency from those who hold power. And we need to challenge the biases that fuel wrongful accusations." Malik's story sparked conversations far beyond his own community. It reached local leaders, law enforcement agencies, and policymakers. Some began re-examining procedures to prevent cases like Malik's from happening again. Police departments introduced new training focused on implicit bias and evidence handling. But Malik was clear: change doesn't happen overnight. It requires ongoing effort from everyone, individuals, communities, and institutions. Here's what you can do to help make a difference. Listen carefully to stories of those affected by wrongful accusations and systemic injustice. Support organizations working to reform the criminal justice system, whether through donations, volunteering, or spreading awareness. Encourage local officials to implement training that addresses racial bias and improves evidence management. Examine your own biases and speak out when you witness unfair treatment. Use your voice and your vote to push for policies that protect the innocent and hold authorities accountable. Malik's journey reminds us that justice is fragile and must be defended every day. Every person deserves respect, fairness, and the chance to tell their truth. When we stand together, we can build a system that protects all, not just some. Thank you for listening to Malik's story. If his experience touched you, please share this video with your friends, family, and community. Subscribe to this channel to hear more stories that shine light on truth, resilience, and justice. Join the conversation in the comments. Your voice matters. Justice is more than a promise, it's a responsibility. Will you be part of the change?